soccer stadium that held 10,000 people. The amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, if this stadium seats 10,000 people, is the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere would be the equivalent of 3.5 chairs in that 10,000 seat stadium. It's nothing. It's nothing. You can double it and you won't even notice the difference. So somehow that has been turned into something that is good for us, has somehow been turned into something that is bad for us.
When we did our first climate show last year, when we actually went live, there was a conference in Copenhagen. And that very same day, the EPA declared CO2 a toxin.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes, that is an attack on the American public as far as I'm concerned. And the cap-and-trade law has now been shot down, but because the EPA has become so powerful, I think we're going to be seeing them doing end runs in every possible way, and they're going to be, my guess is that they will be declaring new regulations that will accomplish the same thing that we're all so much against. It's to me, it's a
tragedy.
It's a shame. It's an absolute shame.
One more thing before we close this segment. The number of underwater volcanoes is staggering.
Yes.
Talk about that and the impact underwater volcanoes have on our environment.
Yes, because, when we talk about global warming, this is one of the things I say in my first book. It's not global warming, it's ocean warming. It's not caused by humans. As far as I'm concerned, it's caused by underwater volcanoes. And that's another place where I'm getting a lot of scientists that are beginning to come over to my side. But when I first started researching for Not by Fire But by Ice back in 1991, that's how long I've been doing this, but when I first started researching it, scientists said that 80% of all volcanic activity occurred underwater. They also said that there were about 10,000 underwater volcanoes in the entire world. And so those underwater volcanoes, by the way, they pump lava into the sea that's 2,100 degrees hot. It's 10 times the boiling point. Gee, I wonder what's heating the oceans. Well, anyway, that was 1991. They thought there were 10,000 underwater volcanoes. In 1993, they discovered more volcanoes. They discovered rift volcanoes off the west coast of the United States. They discovered coaxial volcano, which is a rift volcano off the coast of Oregon. That's about 6 miles long. Now, a rift volcano, it's not like we think of these conical-shaped volcanoes that rise into the sky. These rift volcanoes are just long cracks in the ground that open up, or cracks in the seafloor that open up, and then lava pours out of them. And that lava can come out without hardly any earthquakes, so you hardly even know it's coming. So they discovered this coaxial volcano off the coast of Oregon. And then later on, they discovered another 1,100 underwater volcanoes off the coast of Easter Island. So in just a matter of months, they increased the world's supply of known underwater volcanoes by 10%. Well, that was 1993. Now, NASA and NOAA estimate there may be as many as 3 million underwater volcanoes. I mean, they were off by orders of magnitude. Now they estimate that there are 3 million underwater volcanoes. They don't know how many are active. They estimate that several thousand of those are active. I know that's not a very precise term, but that's the estimate. But anyway, they're pumping lava into the seas. In the Arctic Ocean, I don't deny the Arctic Ocean has been heated, but I don't think it's caused by humans. I don't know how a farmer on his tractor in Kansas is going to heat the water in the Arctic Ocean. But what they have discovered, there was the Max Planck Society that wanted to explore underwater volcanoes in the Arctic Ocean. And they sent a submersible down and to check out the Gackel Ridge. The Gackel Ridge is a chain of underwater volcanoes underneath the Arctic Ocean that is bigger than the Alps. I mean, it's a huge chain of underwater volcanoes. It's about 1,100 miles long. And they were totally shocked. They found that it's so active down there that in some cases they had to be very careful that the heat coming out of those underwater volcanoes didn't actually melt their submersible cables. Now, when I wrote the book, I mentioned the Arctic is that scientists have been confused because so much of Canada during the last ice age was covered with 2 miles of ice, and yet their research shows that the Arctic didn't have any more ice on it than it does today, and they couldn't understand why. Well, those underwater volcanoes would explain that, and they would explain why the Arctic is heating now. And now that ties us back to the magnetic reversals, is because volcanic activity and earthquake activity both increase dramatically in sync with precession of the equinoxes, in sync with the Milankovitch cycle.
Wow, that's profound.
Yeah, and it's there. I mean, I mentioned in my first book, I'm trying to think, Barbados, I think it is. But anyway, scientists have discovered that Barbados has actually risen out of the sea in sync with precession. Because when you fly into Barbados, as you look down, you can see that Barbados is terraced. And they've been able to date those terraces, and they realize that Barbados has been pushed out of the sea by huge earthquakes that date in sync with this same cycle. So, yeah, I expect that we will see earthquake activity increasing dramatically. I think we'll see volcanic activity increasing dramatically. I think we'll see precipitation increasing, because as volcanic activity increases underwater, we'll see those oceans warming, which will create more and more evaporation rising into the sky. And at the same time, the increase in above-water volcanic activity will cool the skies. So you put that together, warming oceans and cooler skies, you've got the recipe for an ice age.
I really don't know what to say, but it sounds like you have compiled and researched many of the aspects of the wheel of this situation. I just don't think that most of us are in a mindset to deal with what this could mean. And I think that many of us, Robert, are preparing improperly for the coming times.
Well, there's one thing, though, that because I've had a lot of people say this sounds like gloom and doom. And I agree in many respects that it does. But, there's one thing about it is that our ancestors did make it through. I don't know how many of them made it through, but they did make it through. And so I don't think it's totally doom and gloom. I think what we have to be doing, though, is figure out what was it that they did. I mean, we've been so busy trying to comprehend what killed the dinosaurs and what caused so many extinctions that we've almost ignored what traits the survivors may have shared. Because so many animals made it across the KT boundary when the dinosaurs went extinct, and so many animals survived other extinctions that they must have left clues. And the dinosaurs and millions of other animals went extinct at the end of Cretaceous, but 86% of the freshwater animals survived. So we got to find out what it is about freshwater as opposed to saltwater that helped protect them. During the KT extinction, the dinosaur extinction, where most species where the adults weighed more than 55 pounds went extinct. So what was it about the smaller ones that saved them? The Neanderthals went extinct at the Lake Mungo of magnetic reversal, but we, modern humans, we lived in Europe at the same time, and we survived. So what did we do? The European forest elephant went extinct at Mono Lake magnetic reversal, but our ancestors survived. The mammoths went extinct, millions of mammoths and mastodons. They all disappeared 11,500 years ago, but